The girlfriend of Clint Eastwood for a long time passed away at the age of 61. The Post has been told by someone from the Monterey County Health Department that Christina died of a heart attack. Clint Eastwood did something that no one thought was possible at age 94. He was in charge of 42 movies. Some people said it was his best work in 10 years. Behind the scenes, though, he was sad about a loss that had changed everything. It came as a surprise that his longtime partner had died. Afterward, his son told him he was okay, but the words sounded careful. Then there was a strange interview that Eastwood himself said was a fake. There was something more going on. And when the truth came out, it made sense why this could be the last time we hear from him. Clint Eastwood came into the world in San Francisco on May 31, 1930. People saw him right away because he was so big. They called him Samson before anyone even filled out the paperwork because he weighed 11 pounds 6 ounces. Even though the Great Depression kept changing their plans, Clinton Sr. and Ruth took him home to the Lake Merritt neighborhood in Oakland to try to build a stable life. His dad first worked as a bond salesman and then found a long-term job at Georgia Pacific. His mother stayed home with the kids until they were older, and then she got a job as a clerk at IBM. Jean, Clint's younger sister, was his only sibling. During the 1930s, when the economy was bad, the family moved from town to town in search of work. At the time, these early shifts felt like a way to stay alive. But that story would be changed in a way that no one saw coming years later. Clint talked about poverty for decades. And talked like they had been through a lot. He got into the story of how the Depression had made his childhood hard. Then Sandra Locke, who lived with him from 1975 to 1989, tore that picture apart. She said that the family finally settled down in Piedmont in 1940, which is one of Northern California's wealthiest suburbs. They owned their own pool, belonged to a country club, and had enough money for everyone in the family to have their own car. People were shocked because in the 1940s, almost no American families had even one car, let alone several. Locker made it very clear that they were never poor. The story Clint liked to tell about himself got harder when he told that truth. At the same time, the difference between being uncertain as a child and being spoiled as a teenager quietly changed how he moved through the world. Even though his friends and family were there to comfort him, Clint always fought against school. He didn't care much about anything else besides cars, girls, and beer. In middle school, he was put behind one whole grade. Things only got worse when he started at Piedmont High in January 1945. Within a year, he was kicked out of school for a number of dangerous actions, such as writing an offensive message on the scoreboard, setting someone on fire, and riding his bike across a wet sports field until he damaged the grass. He had long arms, legs, and hair pulled back into a ducktail by that time. He was 6 feet, 4 inches tall. He changed schools and graduated on February 2, 1949, from Oakland Technical High School. During all of it, the only things that really interested him were music and metalworking. They moved to Seattle with him in 1949, which made the year 1949 even more important. Clint stayed behind in California when he was 18. He chose to be independent over being comfortable. He looked for work everywhere he could while the rest of his family got used to their new life in the Pacific Northwest. He was a firefighter, a golf caddy, and a lifeguard. He moved around Oakland and nearby towns without a clear plan but with a lot of drive. He was in the right place for what was coming because he chose to stay in California. Only 2 years later, in 1951, he was drafted into the Army and sent to Fort Worth as a swimming instructor. A worker at Universal Studios saw him on the base, and that almost accidental event was the start of his career in Hollywood. The Eastwood family had money by the time they got to Piedmont, but Clint still remembered all the other times they had to move. He picked up his father's strict way of working. Ruth's move from housewife to office worker taught him something. He knew how hard someone had to work to keep things stable and how quickly stability could disappear. These small lessons taught him how to be efficient long before he worked on a movie set. Later, when he was known for making movies quickly, quietly, and on budget, he said that this way of thinking came from the values he learned during the Great Depression, even though he had never been poor himself. On September 30, 1951, when Clint, who was now 21 years old, got on a Navy plane after going to Seattle to see his girlfriend, things changed again. A lot of soldiers at the time wore their uniforms to get free rides as military passengers. After leaving Sandpoint Naval Air Station, the Douglas AD-1Q Sky Raider flew to California. What was supposed to be a simple lift turned into a battle to stay alive. Clint worked as a swimming teacher at Fort Ord while the Korean War was going on in the United States. He had never been in battle before. But that night, his experience of being close to death happened in the sky instead of on the battlefield. At 18:25, everything inside the plane started to go wrong. The radio stopped working, so no one could talk. Not long after that, the oxygen system stopped working as well, leaving the pilot and passenger gasping for air as the pressure from the altitude hit them. The pilot couldn't find his way because the navigation system went out, and there was thick fog along the coast. Not even the radio link between the cockpit and Clint's seat could be heard. The companion plane vanished into the fog, and the fuel ran out faster than planned. As soon as the Sky Raider got to the water near Point Reyes, its tanks were empty. The pilot had no choice but to ditch the plane about 2 miles out into the cold Pacific. It was a rough landing, but it was straight. Clint and Lieutenant Francis Anderson had just enough time to get into the cold water and escape. They blew up 2 rafts and paddled away from the plane that was sinking. The plane went down about 150 feet into the water and disappeared. Strong currents split the men up, leaving Clint to fight his way alone to a faint lighthouse light on the shore far away. He rowed and swam through cold water for almost an hour. Even though his arms were burning and his body was shaking, he had to move forward. Once he got to land, he got lost and kept going until he found the RCA radio station at Point Reyes. Afterward, the station worker said Clint looked confused and could barely talk. Years later, Captain Chesley Sullenberger was hesitant to let a movie be made about his landing in the Hudson River in 2009. But when he found out that Clint Eastwood had survived a similar crash in 1951, his mind was made up. This shared understanding made Sullenberger give up his fight. That they knew each other helped Clint give the 2016 movie Sully an honesty that only someone who had felt cold water close in on their body could understand. The crash also changed Clint's path in ways that no one saw coming. Before the incident, he was supposed to be sent to Korea for a deployment. The investigation and medical exams that came after slowed things down. And his deployment was over by the time the paperwork was done. That year, a lot of young soldiers were sent out and never came back. Clint stayed at Fort Ord and worked as a lifeguard for the rest of his service. This was the same job that kept him alive in the Pacific. That experience made him more aware of risk and death. Some things that later came out in his movies as both an actor and a director. When he got out of the army, he went straight to Hollywood without a plan and with very little money. He dug pools. He was in charge of garbage trucks. He went to LA City College for a while but quit to focus on acting. His roles were small and uncredited, and he was only in movies for a few minutes in 1955's Revenge of the Creature. Then, on October 23, 1955, Universal Studios fired him for good. Executives thought he looked strange because he had a big Adam's apple, spoke slowly, and had a chipped tooth. He moved around the business for 3 years, wondering if the door to acting would ever open again. When Charles Marcus Warren cast him as Rowdy Yates in Rawhide in 1958, everything changed. It first aired on January 9, 1959. And was Clint's first steady job. He used to make around $700 to $750 per episode. Not much by today's standards, but it was enough to stop worrying about money all the time. Every Friday night, millions of people let him into their living rooms. His pay went up over the years to about $100,000 a year, but he still felt trapped. I liked how Rowdy Yates was active, loyal, and honest. But Clint knew he was more and was just waiting for a part that would let him show it. From 1965 on, Rawhide started to fall apart. In order to save money, CBS fired Eric Fleming and a number of other cast members that summer. Some people thought Fleming was lying when he said in public that he was making $220,000 that year. Clint took over as trail boss. But CBS didn't give him any extra money. He was mad because he thought the show had lost its flow. Then, the network took a risky move by moving Rawhide to Tuesday nights, where it would have to compete with a lot of other shows. Clint was only in 13 episodes before CBS canceled the show in December 1965. Fleming died the next year, on September 28, 1966, while making a movie in Peru, leaving a sad mark on the history of the show. Even more amazing is the fact that Clint almost missed the chance that would have changed his life. During the break between seasons 6 and 7, Sergio Leone, an Italian director, asked him to come to Spain to work on a small Western movie. Clint didn't seem very excited. His attention was on golf, and he didn't think the offer had much potential. It only paid $15,000. The boss didn't speak English. The movie looked more like a test than a step forward in their career. He mostly took the job because he was interested. He had no idea how quickly this chance was going to pass. Leone first asked Eric Fleming, but Fleming said no because he made more money on Rawhide. After reading the script, Charles Bronson thought it was the worst thing he had ever seen. Richard Harrison also said no, but he remembered Clint from a cheap Western and suggested that they work together. That one idea changed the course of Hollywood history. With only $200,000 to work with, A Fistful of Dollars was shot near Madrid. Some crew members didn't get paid and even took out the windows of the set to protest. The movie came out in Italy on September 12, 1964, and made $19.9 million around the world, way more than anyone thought it would. Clint didn't find out about any of this until weeks later. He had no idea that a movie he was interested in had just changed the course of his career. Things went really well. The second movie made $15 million and cost $600,000 to make, just a few dollars more. Clint's pay went up to $50,000. Lion hesitated again when he was making the last movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The director almost put Bronson in his place. But Clint came back after being offered $250,000 plus 10% of the money made at the Western box office. That movie made $38.9 million around the world. By the end of the trilogy, he was a famous person all over the world. Clint liked to think about how simple it would have been for him to miss everything. He might have stayed a TV side character making $700 an episode if he had picked golf over that trip to Spain. He met people in a way that Rawhide never could have, through The Man with No Name. His stillness, silence, and sharp look in his eyes became his trademarks, and his style has been used in movies for decades. It was clear from the numbers by 1968. For Hang 'Em High, he got $400,000 plus 25% of the net profits. For Where Eagles Dare, he got $750,000, and for Coogan's Bluff, he got $1 million. He went from making $15,000 a movie to more than $1 million a movie in just 4 years. That's one of the biggest pay cuts Hollywood has ever seen. The movie Dirty Harry came out in theaters on December 23, 1971, and just the time made people nervous. People in Northern California were still scared of the Zodiac Killer, a real killer who had tortured, killed, and slain people there between 1968 and 1969. It is known that at least 5 people died. The most recent death was that of cab driver Paul Stein in San Francisco on October 11, 1969. The Zodiac sent a lot of mean letters to newspapers bragging about killing 37 people, but police could only confirm that they had killed 5. The police had no leads by the end of 1971. No suspect, no arrest, and no name. Then all of a sudden, people were sitting in dark theaters watching a made-up police officer hunt down Scorpio, a killer who looked a lot like Zodiac, complete with random violence and mean messages to the press. It gave me chills to think that while justice was swift on screen, the city had been helpless just 2 years before. That anger went right out into the streets. It was protest time for the 1971 Academy Awards. People held signs that said, "Dirty Harry is a rotten pig." The country was already rough. The shootings at Kent State had only happened a year before. Vietnam was tearing the country apart, and people lost faith in the police as news stories of abuse, corruption, and being caught were broadcast all over. People in the Bay Area, especially feminist groups, hissed at Clint Eastwood when he went on stage. Some reviewers said the movie made police brutality look good at the worst possible time. There was anger over more than one movie. It had to do with the ongoing debate over the 1966 Miranda v. Arizona case, which said that police had to tell suspects of their rights. Conservatives thought it kept criminals safe. For civil rights groups, unchecked power was a big worry. Dirty Harry landed right in the middle of that crash. The word fascist came right after the movie. A lot of it was about the part where Harry shoots Scorpio in the leg at Kaiser Stadium and drives his foot into the wound to get information about a girl who has been taken. Eastwood never said that the movie didn't break Miranda rules. Harry looks around without a search warrant. It's against the law for him to torture people. He doesn't win, though, because of the story. When the prosecutor says that Scorpio has to be freed because the evidence was obtained illegally, Harry asks a simple question about the rights of the girl. The answer is very sharp. The DA says that his office would speak for her if Harry would let them. In the end, Harry is turned down by the system completely. The killer moves around. The badge is thrown away by Harry. The movie doesn't end with victory, it ends with disgust for both chaos and the law. Who speaks for victims? That question caused a stir in 1971 because the answer was not pleasant. Victims' rights groups were not very active. The first meeting of the National Organization for Victim Assistance would not happen until 1975. In the United States, the first rape crisis center opened the same year that Dirty Harry came out. The decision in Miranda versus Arizona was still fresh, coming down to a close 5-4 vote in 1966. Congress had already tried to weaken it with a law in 1968, but failed. Scorpio asked for a $200,000 ransom while a teenage girl suffocated underground. Harry's question showed that there was a real problem with the system. The law was mostly about protecting the accused, and victims wouldn't have their own group of advocates for years. The controversy did not fade the film, instead, it made it explode. The movie Dirty Harry made $28.1 million in ticket sales in the United States and sparked 4 sequels. People who were angry about Vietnam, crime, and not being able to do anything saw something real in the mirror. Everyone said the same line, which was often misquoted, and it was about being lucky. People were still arguing about what the movie meant decades later. The Library of Congress added Dirty Harry to the National Film Registry in 2012, which was exactly 41 years after it came out. The answer was clear and easy to understand. It's not that these movies are perfect that they were chosen. They were picked because they show what Americans were like at that time. The movie that was once called fascist propaganda was kept as a cultural artifact. As all of that noise went on around Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood worked quietly on something else. His first movie, Play Misty for Me, came out in 1971, the same year that the movie that made him famous came out. It was shot in his hometown of Carmel, California, and showed that he could make a story his own. His success gave him power. His films in the 1970s included High Plains Drifter, 1972, The Eiger Sanction, 1975, and The Outlaw, Josie Wales, 1976. During that time, he both acted and directed. He stopped just being a gunman by taking charge of himself, and looked into guilt, consequences, and moral weight. The image of the cowboy began to break down. After many years, that long shift paid off. Unforgiven changed everything at the 65th Academy Awards on March 29, 1993. The movie won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. Eastwood was one of only a few actors to direct their own win. He was 62 years old. Though it only cost $14.4 million, the movie made $159.2 million around the world and busted a lot of myths about the Western genre he helped create. It was a gift to Sergio Leone and Don Siegel, 2 men who helped him in his early career. It was clear what he meant even when he lost Best Actor to Al Pacino. Eastwood changed the story of his life. After 10 years, he did it again, but this time with even more force. Million Dollar Baby won Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, and Best Supporting Actor at the 77th Academy Awards on February 27, 2005. The $30 million movie made $216.8 million around the world, beating out movies that were heavily favored. Eastwood was in charge of the whole project. He directed, produced, composed, and acted. As of that time, he was the oldest person to win the award for Best Director. He was 74 years and 272 days old. It came 12 years after Unforgiven, showing that the first movie's success wasn't a fluke. When most filmmakers would have slowed down, he was making his most emotionally charged movies. Part of what kept him going was the way he worked. Eastwood became famous for only needing 1 or 2 takes to get a good shot. They quickly learned to be ready. There wasn't a lot of practice or endless repetition. He thought that real conversations only happen once, not 50 times. Things stayed calm on set, costs stayed low, and schedules stayed tight. Not staged or planned, the performances felt natural and free. His method showed that being careful could make creativity stronger instead of weaker. Outside of work, his personal life was just as complicated. Clint Eastwood had at least 8 children with 6 different women between 1954 and 1996. The oldest child was 42 years old when the youngest was born. Several of them were born while he was married to Maggie Johnson, who was his wife from 1953 to 1984. Kimber, born on June 17, 1964, was one of the daughters that was kept a secret for 25 years, until it came out in July 1989. The truth was kept secret as his fame grew, even though his name was on the birth certificate. Eastwood lived openly as if he were single during that long marriage. As early as 1963, he said he was going to do whatever he pleased and said affairs were addicting. She moved through his life on movie sets and in acting classes. Maggie Johnson, meanwhile, stood strong. The stress was clear to everyone around them. Some people said the marriage was public. Others talked about pain they could see. He had an affair with stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis that started in 1959 and went on for 14 years. It led to Kimber. The relationship was shown openly on the sets while the marriage went on. Then he had a dangerous relationship with Sandra Locke that lasted 13 years and ended with a lawsuit for $70 million on April 26, 1989. Locke said Eastwood lied, forced him, and manipulated him. She later found out that he had fathered 2 children with another woman during the last few years of their relationship. A $1.5 million directing deal was used to settle the case, but it was later shown in court to be a fake. Locke quickly won in court, and the case was over after another settlement. It was January 2009, and Clint Eastwood was 78 years old. He quietly did something that Hollywood said was no longer possible. Gran Torino opened in only 84 theaters, which was kind of like a test run. It looked like a small amount of money, but the first weekend only brought in $271,720. After that, something changed. The word got around. The movie blew up in theaters and made $29 million in its first weekend in wide release. His old record of $18.1 million from Space Cowboys was erased by that one number. What struck me even more was how big the risk was. Making Gran Torino didn't cost $33 million. More than 11 times its budget, it made $269.9 million around the world by the end of its run. Each theater made an average of $10,337, which was Eastwood's biggest nationwide start as an actor and director. A quiet story about an old Korean War veteran and his Hamon neighbors brought them together in a way that no one expected. It showed that age doesn't matter when it comes to connections. After a few years, that momentum carried over into an even bigger cultural moment. If you went to the movies in January 2015, American Sniper did not sneak in. It broke the door in half. The movie made $105.3 million in its first 4 days, which is the most cash ever seen in an opening weekend for a drama. The worldwide total by the end of its run was $547.7 million, even though it cost between $58 and $59 million to make. Because of that gap, it was the second most profitable movie of 2014, after Transformers: Age of Extinction, which made an estimated $243 million. It made more money than Saving Private Ryan, making it the biggest war movie of all time. It was also only the 7th R-rated movie to make more than $500 million. Bradley Cooper was nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, for his role as Navy SEAL Chris Kyle. But at the same time, the movie caused backlash. The time of Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, Filmmaker Michael Moore spoke out against the movie, saying that the snipers were cowards and that the language used against Iraqis was offensive. Applause and anger came together. And nobody could avoid seeing the movie. Eastwood had already shown a few years before that he could make headlines without having a movie out. He spoke at the Republican National Convention in Tampa, Florida, on August 30, 2012, when he was 82 years old. No one saw what he was going to say in his 12-minute speech. His speech wasn't very good, but he spoke to an empty chair that was supposed to be President Barack Obama. Almost 30 million people watched it live. The response came right away and was very harsh. Roger Ebert said it was sad and weak. Even Republican advisors said in a quiet way that it was strange and weird. There was no giving up for Eastwood. In the end, he said that he wasn't trying to please people on either end of the spectrum. What Jon Stewart said best sums it up. Joking that the speech showed a different side of Obama that only Republicans could see, one that was nothing like the real Obama. After a month, the event seemed even stranger. Eastwood said in September 2012 that the empty chair wasn't part of the plan. He said that there was a stool there and someone kept asking him if he wanted to sit down. The idea just hit him at that moment. In contrast, he wanted a room full of practice lines was not what he was looking for. He said it wasn't normal, but the crowd was excited. His goal was easy. Put the chair there and talk to Obama about the promises he made but didn't keep. The fact that one of the most talked about political events of the decade was made up on the spot made it even more famous. The answer from the White House came within hours. On August 31, 2012, President Obama's Twitter account posted a picture of him sitting at the cabinet table with 3 words written below it. "This seat is already taken." The tweet was shared 51,400 times by Sunday afternoon, making it his second most retweeted post ever at that point. His tweet in May 2012 in favor of same-sex marriage got 6,500 retweets, which was the only tweet that did better. Being simple worked. The picture changed the story and turned mockery into a quiet show of authority without arguing or attacking. When Eastwood wasn't being watched by cameras and crowds, his personal life was just as quiet. In 1986, he paid about $5 million for the Mission Ranch Hotel and Restaurant in Carmel by the Sea. This kept the 22-acre property from being turned into condos. He was mayor of Carmel that same year and only made $200 a month. Soon after, in 2014, when she was working there as a hostess, he met Christina Sandara. In a few months, she moved into his house. Tabloids called the woman they saw leaving a Whole Foods in Brentwood in June 2014 a mystery woman. That's when the two were first photographed together. His kids met her early on and liked her right away, saying that she is normal and grounded. The relationship stayed secret on purpose. The first time they were seen in public was at the 87th Academy Awards on February 22, 2015, at the Dolby Theatre. That night, American Sniper was up for 6 Oscars. Over the next few years, Sandara and Eastwood went to a few premieres together, such as Sully in 2016, 1517 to Paris in 2018, and The Mule later that same year. In November 2019, at AFI Fest for Richard Jewell, they shared their last red carpet moment together. She walked next to him with her gray hair showing in no attempt to hide her age or the truth. Then they were no longer seen by anyone. It hurt a lot when the silence broke. Kristen Sandara died suddenly at a hospital in Monterey County, California, on July 18, 2024. It was only 2 days after her 61st birthday, on July 16, 2024. In a statement that same day, Eastwood, who was 94 at the time, said she was a lovely, caring woman and that he would miss her a lot. Later, the death certificate confirmed that cardiac arrhythmia was the cause, with atherosclerotic coronary artery disease playing a part. More than 60% of cardiovascular deaths and more than 73% of sudden cardiac deaths in people over 35 are caused by coronary artery disease. The timing of the loss made it even worse. It was someone's birthday. 10 years of being together ended without warning. After some time, in January 2025, Eastwood's son Scott told him that his dad was doing well and called him a survivor. He said that being tough was in the family. You don't say anything bad. You don't complain. You do it. That way of thinking came from living through the Great Depression and World War II as a child. Reports said Eastwood had quietly started dating someone else by late 2024, but no name was ever confirmed. He kept working even when he was sad. At age 94, Eastwood directed Juror 2, which was his 42nd movie as a director. In October 2024, the movie had its premiere at AFI Fest. It shocked critics with a 92% score on Rotten Tomatoes from 74 equipos, strong 94 reviews, and a Metacritic score of 73. Warner Brothers only put the movie in less than 50 theaters and never reported the domestic numbers. However, the film made $27.3 million overseas, even though it cost around $30 million to make. That performance was much better than Cry Macho 2021, which only made $16.5 million around the world. Many reviewers said that Juror 2 was his best movie since American Sniper. Then there was more confusion. An Austrian newspaper published what seemed to be an interview with Eastwood in May 2025, just a few days before his 95th birthday on May 31st. In it, he criticized modern Hollywood and said he was working on another movie. A lot of news outlets picked up on it. As of June 2, 2025, Eastwood ended the interview, saying that it was all fake and that he had not talked to any reporters. Still, new reports came out in January 2026. People who work in the business said he was once again in pre-production. Seen working quietly on the Warner Brothers set. Not a title or cast list, just rumors. Most critics agree that Juror 2 is a much better ending than Cry Macho if it turns out to be the last book. Even though it doesn't feel like a proper goodbye, it proves that Clint Eastwood could still make a smart, moving movie at age 94. He's been in the business for more than 70 years, and that alone makes it feel like the perfect ending.